Jag Panzer have been around for a while. They started in 1983, and they play the U.S. power metal. It's not something we hear a lot of. The vocalist's name is Harry the Tyrant Conklin, and this band has really kind of like focused on like this specific like niche for themselves. So that's what I really like about this band. And also, according to Encyclopedia Metallum, the lyrical topics are destruction, metal, dark fantasy, warfare, literature, Shakespeare. I know they have one Macbeth album, and ninjas. Now, if anybody knows what album or what song is about ninjas, let me know, because that's like epic to a whole other level. We will last through the frost. So the first album was called The Ample Destruction. It released in 1984, and this is just catchy, kick-ass heavy metal, and it's just very big. It's a type of album that reminded me of a band like Cirith Ungol, very 80s sounding, but I'm going to be going into that like later. Like everything kind of sounds like 80s, but that was a pretty big album. And then they took a break, and then it came back in 1994 with a Dissident Alliance. Then in 1997, The Fourth Judgment. That one had more of like a refined sound. But they stayed together since then, and they have been releasing lots of albums. So, for example, they released The Age of Mastery in 1998. And as I was saying before, they had an album about Macbeth, and that's called Thane to the Throne from 2000. So they've had a pretty long career. So the band has been pretty active. It has been a while since their last album. It's been around 6 years. Their last album was called The Deviant Chord, but they're back, and it's called The Hallowed, so let's talk about that. This new album, The Hallowed, is a concept album about a bleak and dystopian future, and they also have a comic book that the band actually released last year. So this is pretty cool. You know, you got comic books and heavy metal. It's epic power metal. So I like how it has the story and it has the comic associated with it, and sounds pretty good. So let's dive deeper into this album. So let's first talk about the singles. The first single is called Stronger Than You Know. It has a classic heavy metal sound. Everything you would expect, from soaring vocals to wailing guitars. It's just pretty good. You know, they're not reinventing the wheel or anything. It's just classic heavy metal. I thought the harmonized guitar sounded very good. Has lots of wailing high string bends, and it kind of gave it a classic feel. The second single, Onward We Toil. I've said this in many other reviews. This type of song reminds me of warriors getting ready to go into battle. If you look at the cover of the single, it shows this big werewolf with men trudging through the snow. It has like an Iron Maiden type of feel with some harmonized guitar parts, and the chorus like the whoa, whoa, you know how like Maiden likes to do that. And out of the three singles, I think this was probably the best. I think maybe because I'm a big Iron Maiden fan, it reminded me of that. But I think I like this song a lot. And the third single was Edge of the Knife. They kind of start with some weird kind of sound effects, but that kind of all ties into like the story. They do the stop-start riffs. This is like one of the few songs where they mix like the keyboards and the guitars, and then it's just after that classic heavy metal. This reminds me a lot of Manowar with epic vocals and galloping guitars. The song had a very like 80s feel, the type of song that transports you back to a time when like music videos were very cheesy. Like everyone had these campy costumes. I'm thinking of like Holy Diver by Dio, that kind of thing. It's 6 minutes long. It might be a little long. They could have trimmed off a minute or so, but still a very good song. Let's go over the rest of the songs. Opening song, Bound as One. We will last through the frost. Really good mix of power chords and melodic leads. It's a good album opener. Kind of brought me back to the 80s. Kind of brought back like memories of like Iron Maiden and things like that. Pray is the second song. it has that spoken word section, and like a lot of these songs have that like spoken intros because of the whole concept thing. This one has like these heavy chugging guitars. Kind of reminds me of like NWO by Ministry. They kind of alternate the guitar riffs and the vocals, and it has a melodic chorus. This is one of like the heavier songs that has more of a pounding drums and like a thick bass sound. And Ties That Bind was more of a melodic rocker with a slower guitar intro. This one reminded me of like Revelations by Iron Maiden. Had that kind of like bouncy rhythm. It was very epic, fist in the air, that type of sound. It had a melodic solo. It was like a power metal and a nice contrast from the heavy song that preceded it. And then those are the first 3 songs in the album. And then after that are the 3 singles, which I just talked about. And then we're going to jump ahead to track number 7, which is Dark Descent. And this one has another spoken part. This one actually kind of reminded me of like Number of the Beast, like this like old man telling a story or something. And it continues with some melodic lead guitar melodies and a powerful drum beat. Has lots of energy, very epic sound. I like the breakdown, and the vocals were very melodic. Weather the Storm is more like traditional power metal. Kind of reminded me of like 80s metal, but like mixed with that like traditional power metal, just like that like epic, very melodic. Another one, you know, evoking images of like the warriors fighting and that type of thing. And it's not very fast paced, just very epic. The last 2 songs I think might be some of my favorites because they're kind of like longer, a little more complex, a little more progressive, I guess I can call them. So track 9, Renewed Flame. This one starts off with some like folk metal with like the melodies in the intro. Then has a driving beat, melodic lead guitar melodies. It's another epic song, reminding me of classic Manowar, and I thought it was cool. It had a classic metal feel with some tempo changes and big guitar riffs. I think it's one of the better songs on the album. They seem to be taking more chances with different sounds. There's some like Middle Eastern inspired guitar riffs, and the song was only 5 minutes long, but I felt they packed a lot into the song. And then Last Rites was the final song and the longest on the album. Another song that had like the spoken part. And keep in mind, it's a concept album, so this is where they bring the entire story together. So the song had like a slow and epic feel with a lot of big power chords. The song is darker, it's more menacing. A lot of voices that can be heard throughout the song, and that adds to the atmosphere of it. The drums were very good. They helped create the imagery of the song with pounding beats and like these epic like bells. They kind of added some violins at one point. And the last 2 minutes is just this, I guess I'll call it like a skit. I don't want to give it away because it kind of like wraps up the story and it's kind of like the ending to a movie. I really like that part because a lot of the times these concept albums, you listen to the music, you don't really always get into the story. But in this one, I think they did a good job of like kind of like bringing you in and then giving you closure at the end. So I like that. This is a band that on the one hand, this sounds very derivative of classic metal bands, but on the other, it's kind of unique because there are a lot of like bands trying to revive a classic heavy metal out there, but it's a band that's bringing back a style that kind of like bridges the power metal bands of those more like European bands like Blind Guardian or Hallowed, and that like epic heavy metal like Manowar, Iced Earth, classic Dio. Now, they're called like US power metal, and I don't know if that's a genre. I guess it is. But it's just something we don't hear very often these days because, as I mentioned, you know, Manowar, they haven't really been putting out much. And Iced Earth, I guess they're pretty much finished after. But what I'm trying to say is my score is an 8 out of 10. I thought it was pretty good. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the album. Please remember to give this video a like. It helps me with the algorithm. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And I like to respond to comments, and I haven't reviewed any other Jag Panzer videos, but I will stick something up here which is, I guess, related. So check it out if you like this type of music. So thank you. I'll see you in the next one.